Do we have to do something to start? It's like the live stream. It's queued up with our holding thing. No, I'm not. But it's but we're the our mics are live. Cameras are up. There we go. Yep. Well, actually, I see the back of me. I really just see it's you guys. Cruise control. Otherwise, I'd have been arrested. It is 4:02. We are going to be starting our April 1st, 2024 Water and Sewer Committee. We are being streamed on the city's YouTube channel, and Jacqueline Holman in the mayor's office helps us with actually helps us. She does our minutes. So if you are going to address the committee, we ask that, and for the committee folks too, use your mics so that Jacqueline can hear what she needs to type. With all committee members present, first item is approval of our February 21st, 2024 meeting minutes. That was the two-part meeting, first with Hancock County concerning the property out on East 224, the Hickory Lane, and then also the second part of that was a West Park meeting, and we'll take a motion for approval of the minutes.
So moved. Second.
And any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving those minutes as circulated, please say aye.
Aye.
Those are approved. We have two things on our agenda today. First, continuation of our conversations determining the policies and procedures for instituting utility billing rate changes. And second, follow-up meeting on West Park, specifically sanitary projects. The West Park meeting will start promptly at 5 o'clock, not any earlier than 5, and really no later than 5. We'll go as long as we can on the first item, and at 5 o'clock we'll switch over and have a conversation about West Park. So concerning our policies and procedures for instituting utility billing rate changes at our February 5th meeting, just a quick summary. We agreed that all utilities, water, wastewater, and stormwater, both inside and outside of the city, is in scope for these discussions. We talked about three questions that we wanted to discuss in detail: the who, how, and when. Who should have the authority to adjust the rates in the future? The how is kind of what is the process for calculating utility rates, and the when, what is the frequency for reviewing these rates? There were some homework assignments. Guarino, DeArmond, and Bauman were going to look at modeling with Rob, the modeling for our utility rates and all that with Rob and Jeremy. Randy pointed out that he couldn't be, that if we had 3 people working on that, then we had a majority of our committee, and that would break our open meeting rule. So he bowed out of that, and good call, Randy, for keeping us legal with open meeting. So I think that was going to be a Dan and Brian. And then Josh and I were looking at really the first term, question number 1, the who, in terms of Ohio Revised Code. And I will admit, I told Josh I would do the majority of the work with that, and I didn't get it all done. But I really wanted to start here with kind of hear what was discussed with Dan and Brian concerning the modeling and all that, and have a kind of an understanding of this is kind of we're working towards what do we need, what goes into a rate study, and kind of like an understanding of our cost structures with what tools we have now and where we think there are gaps in the information that we have now, that so that we have the right information to go into rate studies. So
Sure. I can
Dan?
answer that. Thanks, Grant. Okay, so on March 5th, Councilman Bowman and I met with Jeremy Kolb and Rob Martin. So we reviewed the financial pro forma to calculate water rates. So it's an Excel workbook of spreadsheets. It incorporates revenue, operating costs, capital costs, depreciation, and the revenue is broken down. They had, residential, commercial, industrial, with different size meters. They did not include miscellaneous services, permits, tap fees. So maybe it's a little conservative, but I thought that was okay. The operating costs, I thought they had good detail on that: labor, materials, chemicals, utilities, subcontractors, and all the things you'd expect in there. The capital cost was tied into the 10-year capital plan. They said it was difficult to predict grant money. I mean, that made sense. And then basically they're running iterations to calculate, the carryover and what the rates need to be. So overall, I thought the tool was robust enough to meet our needs. That was my biggest concern at the last. I mean, is this, because it was a homegrown tool, and is it really robust enough to meet our needs? And I thought it was, actually. I thought it could be easily adapted for sewer rates and stormwater rates. The 2 suggestions I had in my past experience using proformas like this, the 2 things was the equations need to be checked, just to make sure we don't have a mistake in there, and and then secondly, the spreadsheet needs to be protected so that other users don't accidentally change an equation and unknowingly have false calculations there. So the spreadsheet needs to be protected, and the equations need to be checked. So the thought was, and eventually we're going to have this consulting engineering firm that's going to be helping us with our capital plan and helping us with rates, and they would be utilizing that tool, and they would be a good people, I think, to check that. So, okay, so that's really what we focused on. What was the tool? We didn't get into a lot of the other, like the process, but when I think about the process, Rob, I mean, since this is kind of yours, you're going to have to think about all the inputs you need. So, and there are a lot of them are provided from other people, right? I mean, I think our auditor ought to be involved in giving you the starting. And Jeremy certainly is on the capital. We have just the operations guys talking about the the input on the operations side. So you're going to have to just structure when you need those by, like say June 1st, so that you can do your work, after capital projects are approved, right? June 1st, somewhere in there, and then get your work done through the summer, and then fall when you go to budgets, if we need to change rates or whatever, they would be in place by then. So I think in the past, the auditor has talked about that we need to have a bigger rainy day fund. I've heard that not directly, but through other people that he has advocated in the past that we should have our reserves built up for a rainy day fund. And I don't know that we have that. So I think that would be part of this too. Is just like, setting a goal for rainy day. In addition to, I think the state minimum is 3 months of operating. And okay, so So is that enough? Is maybe a question we should ask ourselves. You know, is that enough?
For the rainy day conversation, I'm going to suggest that I think that's a little out of scope for this conversation.
Okay.
In essence, this is the IT guy talking. You have inputs into your black box, which in this case is the Excel spreadsheet, and then the black box is going to, using that analysis, you end up with rates, and whether the rainy day fund is $1 or 10 million, it's just an input. But I think it's germane that. And that's, as you were talking, I was wondering, okay, what are our information inflows into this thing? How fresh are they? Things like that. But having a discussion about our reserve funds is really out of scope for this meeting.
Okay.
And so
Fair enough.
So like,
Okay.
Rob, and for the sake of this meeting, this is a working session.
Okay.
So just
I just wanted
jump
not to
in.
talk out of turn. Just for clarification, want to make sure we're using the right terminology, and if you used it intentionally, that's fine. Just to clarify, the rainy day fund is something separate compared to what I think we're talking about, building a balance to take care of larger projects specific to water. Was that what you were referring to, and just use general term rainy day fund, or no? I just want to make sure we're using the right terminology, because we do have a city.
I know we have
rainy
the
day-
city, but that's separate from.
Right, we're talking
Call
the
it an
water
emergency
fund.
fund. I don't know. I just want to make sure that.
So we were even when we were building the pro formas, before the 6-8 months a year ago, we were talking about the 100-year plan dollar amount that we were putting dollars under. We were putting away for those large projects.
Right.
The balance or the challenge with that is we don't want to get in a position where we're stockpiling money or accused of that, because that's not the case. But I just wanted to make sure not to go down that conversation point of, is it the rainy day fund is not necessarily this.
Yeah.
But I mean, at some point in time, you just jump in. I mean,
Go ahead.
At some point in time, you have you mentioned a 10-year capital plan, and that is an input into this. That was one of the things. I'm glad to hear that's the case. You have capital needs, and our revenue flow has to. Our revenue stream has to cover those long-term CapEx costs, be it done through bonds and recovering our bond carrying costs, or stockpiling cash in order to pay cash for a CapEx project 10 years down the road. I think that does start to come into the conversation, but once again, these are kind of like inputs. I'm looking to, do we have do you understand a tool, a methodology in which that we can, on whatever basis we recommend to council, do an assessment of utility rates so that it is done on a regular process? Brian, you were.
I mean, I guess I wanted to add to Dan's comments. What came to me very apparent through our kind of dive in is that we looked at all avenues in terms of what the increase that occurred needed to look like. That was very apparent to me, that you guys did your homework, and ultimately, perhaps at some point, the increase that we did do may not be enough. And that, I mean, that was kind of just is what jumped off the page at me in our research.
And once
with you
again,
guys.
going back to the first meeting, this is not a committee meeting to justify or not justify or support the previous water rate increase. That's done. We have been tasked with, or asked to look at the going forward process, so that, and I think, Dan, you kind of touched on it, as you started to talk about when in the year, does Rob and Jeremy need the inputs in order to start making the assessment? And that kind of sounded like you were talking about an annual review, which, quite honestly, that's mentally what I'm thinking about, is an annual review.
For all three. You know,
Yes,
water,
yeah.
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Water, wastewater, stormwater.
And I guess, don't get me wrong, I said what I said to speak to the effectiveness of the tool
Okay,
that we
okay.
have.
Appreciate that.
And we do an annual analysis on this from the operations side, the capital planning, understanding what, with labor costs going up, cost of it, everything, from every little detail of chemical costs, when we bid those out, we know what those are going to look like. So we're doing the analysis. It's just, we got to a situation where it became very public on that analysis. So to your point of doing this, there is a cadence of time of year when we know, all right, the operations, we have, the budget has to be approved by council on this day, and then when you start backing up.
Right.
So we know when that is, and the auditor providing that information, it's readily available on his transparency page, and we get those numbers from him. We want to validate or question or get something different, he's willing to provide that for us. But we're doing that on an annual basis, actually quite frequently, on all funds, general or enterprise. The reality is this just became very public.
So can you start putting, just using quarters, so what that cadence looks like on a quarter, so at the beginning of Q4, are you ready to say, here's where we think rates should be for the next year, or is it later in Q4? I mean, what is the cadence kind of? Run through what you
I
think this, using water as an example.
I think by Q4, at the beginning of Q4, we're, based on the cadence of coming to water and sewer, having those conversations, public input, council, I think the beginning of Q4, the plan for the next year, the next adjustment or no adjustment, that messaging has to be
Right.
there.
Yeah.
It has to be because of the budget process.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of think with that, if you're having in that Q4, we already have majority of our capital projects out. You're going to see if you were over or under budget on majority of those. You're going to have a good idea of what your operating expenses look like in that year, how much, kind of projection of what you're going to be giving back. So you can kind of, if you want to look at it more of a checkbook type stance, you can kind of see what your checkbook's going to look like, because you know what capital projects you're going to be having come in the next couple of years or next year or so, where you can start evaluating that. We're going to be getting into operating at that same time. So all that, you're going to be seeing what your operating is. You're going to be seeing how much you spend already throughout that. You're going to be, what capital projects are coming up. At that time, we'll be able to know, hey, did a piece of equipment go down that we didn't expect, and now we have to replace it? Those are the kind of things that are going to be coming around in that kind of Q4 time. June, we can get a good idea, but I still think we're going to have to evaluate again once we get kind of towards the end of the season, almost, if you want to say.
And just to piggyback on that, with the pro formas that have been created, if everything stays true today, moving forward, we can tell you the month in 2027 when we will be below the minimum reserve that's required, as well as when we get down a few more months when we actually are in the red. So the predictive model is there with if everything stays true today on what we're paying for labor, operations, capital, I can tell you with the modeling, we can tell you what that looks like. So we can then, obviously, reality rolls out, and then we adjust our operations and capital spending based on what the needs are. And then we would have to adjust. But if everything stayed true today, we could tell you what that looks like in 2027. So, but then we start analyzing in real time, and then we could make more true recommendations based on what the revenues are coming in as, what the expenses are being portrayed out, and then what our needs are. So it's there, but we can true it up as we get going. But the beginning of Q4, I think, is when we need to have that modeling for future situation recommendations to you all to move forward with.
That's what I'm leaning towards, is some sort of documentation before we get into the budgets heavy. Like to be able to see that documentation of what we're talking about before we even get into the budgeting portion. So, like you say, the beginning of Q4, I think, if we decide to do it annually, to have that documentation with, or to us by then would be, okay.
So would it look, what, I want to make sure I'm seeing what that would look like. We would then figure out what that looks like and schedule a water and sewer committee for us to present that state of the fund, look back as well as look forward, and then here are the recommendations, and then we can work through it. Is that,
And that's kind of like the how question, but to jump to that, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be, to jump to the how question, there's going to be this Ohio Revised Code is going to say, for example, for water, it's clear that you, Rob, are the person who gets to make the final decision on water. I think you should do it like you did with this one. You should come to water and sewer and say, we are recommending these water changes. Water and Sewer Committee, what do you think? And then City Council, what do you think? And ask for our approval. You don't need it, but I think that's good government that you ask. And quite honestly, when we got to the how question, that was going to be my recommendation or my conversation for all of them. Is that it should be the specifics for how it legally is done, whether it's Rob making it or council making the rate changes. It's always going to start with a administration having the conversation of here's where we think they should be, and council giving approval, and then the legal process executing on it. But that's a preview of conversation to come. I wanted to come back to something on the model, and you kind of answered it, but I want to make sure that with this pro forma for water, we raised the rates, and you expect to see a revenue stream come from those rates, and we expect to see consumption, et cetera. Do you then take the reality of what actually happens and compare it to what the model is predicting, and fine-tune the model and adjust and validate that the model is predicting what happens?
it's a great question, and that's actually what we plan to do. That is, the cadence of the bills, people are getting the first batch of the rate change is actually hitting people's mailboxes this last week into this week. So when we start seeing that revenue come in, we're going to then compare what we projected compared to the actual, and then we can see, yep, we were right on. And even, so I don't want to go off track, but yeah, that is the intent, to look at comparison of actual to projected. I do want to just add, because I think it's relevant to the checks and balances of the modeling. When we created this modeling over a year ago, and we've went through this cadence to fruition, the capital process has followed that after it was put into place. And all the modeling that Jeremy's doing with the capital plan, everything is marching out just lockstep to what we predicted it to be. So if you want to add anything to that, it's a validation that what we predicted it to be is actually happening
Good.
the way it was projected.
Good.
So, and it's just different data points in the financial modeling where you get all these different inputs of data, and then you start connecting those, and the math formulas are actually, well, look at this. This is what we predicted it to be based on these things happening.
Yeah.
Yep, that number's the same number. I mean, is there anything you want to add to that? But
Yeah, no, I think you covered that. I guess I was going back to kind of what Grant's first question was on that. How we built the model and how we use it, we relied heavily on our historicals as well. So seeing what those true numbers are is kind of help tweak that, to calibrate, if you want to say, that model, because with water and sewer, you're going to be pretty close to what you are every year, unless you have a different user group come in, you have more people come in, but you're normally going to be within the range. Yes, it's not going to be
On the revenue side.
on the revenue
Not
side.
the
It's not gonna
costs.
be it's not going to be
Yep.
gallon to gallon, but
Right.
you can see through historicals, and we pulled 10 years of data,
Yep.
so we can kind of see where that true number is. So with your original question with that on using that, yeah, we'll want to see how that change affected that revenue stream coming in, and what that's going to look like. We can use those true numbers to keep calibrating that system as we go.
2 comments. So your capital's got to be accurate. So I just noticed we've been talking about this Moracle Boulevard. Phase 2 is not in there, right? It's not in your capital plan that you just sent us the other day. Right, Phase 1 is, but Phase 2 is not in there. It's not listed in that big table. There's not a project in there.
But-
So,
Yeah, it's probably in
I thought it was next year.
25.
It was next year.
It's in 25.
okay.
Yeah, it may not. It's probably not in 24.
It's not on the spreadsheet,
Right.
Under
I'll check
water and sewer.
25, but
Okay.
I think I put in
Wouldn't it-
25. And,
but wouldn't there be a line item with it out on the second? Anyway, okay, point is, you gotta make sure your capital's correct, right? Okay. And then second, I'm still chewing on the emergency thing, Grant. So I don't think the water department should live paycheck to paycheck, right? That's just bad way to do business, right? So I just want to make sure that, stuff happens, stuff breaks, right? There's emergencies. I mean, it happens, right? I mean, so there's got to be some money that,
There
Is there?
currently is.
okay.
There's a rainy day fund, if you want to call it rainy, there's a reserve for the water and for the sewer system. A 3-month reserve, correct?
Correct.
Right, for both of those
Correct.
enterprise systems.
Correct.
That's
Okay.
already in
And-
place.
And how much is that roughly?
The concern was if we needed to have that contingency built in. And then on top of that, if you start marching out, our plant, the projects we've talked about, right?
No, I understand. Yeah.
They're going to be big ticket items, whatever those are. And we have now, you have to plan for that, but you also don't want to overcharge today and have people suffer financially to pay for something in 40 years. So there's that balance, right?
Right.
But then the other conversation that has to be had, and we've started having this conversation with Andrew, the new fiduciary, and starting to get some traction with some conversations. He's diving into the financials, which we're excited about, is do we go to out to bond for some of these big projects? Do we pay cash?
Sure.
Is it a balance?
Right.
And that's where those conversations, I think, are going to be very helpful. We've stopped the hemorrhaging, so to speak, and we're going to be able to operate for the couple of years moving forward, 2027. We've made that very clear. But in the meantime, some of the big projects, that master plan, getting that executed will be huge because that will define a pathway for us moving forward when it comes to prioritizing those big projects as well as a cadence of the little projects. And they would be able to also, based on what the priority of those big projects are, create a modeling for rate structure recommendations. So that's huge.
Yeah.
Real quick, Andrew, so for Andrew, utilities is in scope. And
His words were, because we reviewed the capital plan with him last time he was in town, and he's like, my job's not to tell you what to spend your money on. My job would be to discuss options when it comes to, do we go to the bond market for how many years based on the percents and the interest you're going to pay, et cetera, or do you pay cash?
so he wasn't just focused on general fund, he was including.
City operations.
Great, thank you.
I may be wrong on this, but I'm trying to clarify Dan a little bit. I think what Dan might be thinking about is the sewer department has an equipment replacement fund that was put in when they built the new plant. There had to be money put away for equipment. There is no equipment replacement fund for the water department. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, or.
That sounds like that.
it's- Because that's completely different than the 3-month reserve that you have for both of those.
Yeah.
Because you're not allowed to dip into the 3-month reserve right now, if you had an emergency and you can't go into those funds
No.
necessarily, can you? I mean,
What we would do is come to the council and probably ask for general fund to help support if that was the situation we were in. But again,
no, I didn't
preventing
think that was an
preventing
option.
that from happening.
Is that an option?
It's a
General-
it's a poor option.
It's not, I'm just saying, that our job is to prevent that situation from
Okay.
happening.
All right.
But I agree, it's not a great option, but if you're between,
Okay.
for lack of better terminology, a rock and a hard place, that
Okay.
we would have
All
to
right, well,
pay
if
for
you're,
something.
you guys seemed like you're all comfortable with where it's at, so I'm good with that. Then I
eh,
just want to make sure that.
Actually, Dan, those are ongoing conversations. I know the auditor has previously expressed concerns that we are not properly utilizing those equipment reserve funds, or and so but that's to me that's also a different discussion. Those are simply inputs into this model, and where we
Oh,
want
to build the reserve.
Yeah, to
Oh,
build that
okay.
reserve, and
Right.
where those numbers
Okay.
should be is, but we're just looking at the process.
Yeah.
To me, what I'm hearing is that we have a tool.
We have a
that-
tool.
But and so a couple more questions on the tool, and this is very specific to water. So when we looked at the rate increases last time, there was, I think it was based on meter size, and they had different rates. Does a tool go all the way out to meter size? Do you look at your revenue streams based on what class of customer is providing that? Can you tell that?
Yeah, we pretty much, so we had it broken down all the way down from all the meter sizes that we offer, how many users we had that on, what their projections would be with that, inside and outside rates as well, because there is a difference on that. But we did have that broken down all the way down through there, because if you change a large meter compared to a residential, that's gonna affect your revenue stream.
And so when you validate your model with the historical data, you're looking down to that level on the revenue side.
Yeah, because, that's kind of the things we looked at as well is, do we change, how's that going to affect if you change just the industrial side instead of the residential? What if you change the residential, not the or industrial, trying to come up with creative ways to have the least amount of effect on everyone with that. But, your larger meters are going to be your bigger users majority of the time, not all the time, but, you have some that have multiple taps, but, yeah, we use that information because a lot of that you can change it around to change your revenue stream on how it's coming in. One little change at 1 meter could have an effect on the way down through.
I don't have anything else on that.
Would you see situations where there could be changes to water rates and it doesn't affect all classifications of customers? That you would say, I'm going to do a 1% increase on the largest meters and leave the smallest meters flat?
Early on in our analysis, we did look at different comparisons. To Jeremy's point, only this group, only that group, and there was too much ground to cover, and across the board, it just made sense with the impact that the change that we were proposing to just do it across all users, base as well as usage.
Going forward, though, 5 years down the road, is that, I mean, that right now, then we say we have this, there's the smallest meter compared to the 6th largest meter has a specific difference, and that's going to be set in stone from now on. Is that?
So I'm going to take a swing at this first, and then you can jump in. In our research, there are municipalities that have intentionally done just what you've suggested. That, hey, we're going to impact this group because then indirectly it's going to support this other growth. Then that growth would then support this other one, so it kind of offset itself. So that there is modeling out there that could suggest what you're recommending. It's really for us to make that decision based on what's going on. I mean, I don't think anything's off the table for us to break down and look at what's the best or greatest impact for our bottom line to do what we need to do that would be the least impactful to our citizens. So most bang for your buck, so to speak, general terms.
Yeah, I think going forwards, I think we can get creative, or you can really open it up to different scenarios. But it's like Rob was saying, you're kind of playing on that line where, yeah, you can put it on the industrial, but then are you going to push them too far? Where then you could potentially, I'm not saying, but you could potentially lose them or something like that, or you're putting it too much on the residential where the industrial is getting a break. There is creative opportunities through there. It could be only a couple meters or something like that. It's really how we want to structure it. I think going forwards where we kind of close that gap, we can get into a lot more of those different structures. But it's coming down on what group, how you're going to affect them, what's going to be the effect from that, how are they going to react to it. You still want to bring industry in on that. Are you going to push industry out because your industrial rate's too high, or are you going to push residential out because your residential rate's too high? So it's kind of a fine line you gotta go back and forth with, and I think that's where with us being out kind of in the environment and being out with different industries and getting feedback from different people, you can kind of see what other communities are doing and how our water rates are affecting people coming in and all that kind of stuff.
Just one more thing, I guess, in my head when I hear the what if scenarios down the road, ultimately, if we keep our eyes on this, we don't get in the situation where we have to make that huge jump again. I know we haven't really talked about the cadence of it yet, but I mean, we're focused on this now, and I mean, we saw this coming, and there were some reasons why we waited. We all know that, between meters and transmitters and all that stuff, we waited for a reason intentionally, but there's a lot of research out there that shows what other municipalities do. They just have a cadence to it, and we just have to make a decision on what that looks like.
And you hit something for me. I don't want to go through a major rate increase because our backs are against the wall and we're looking at significant financial difficulties in one of our utilities. So I concur with Dan. You don't want to be in a point where you are looking at your emergency fund or going to the general fund to support a utility. And I was going to ask about is a survey of other municipalities part of it's not part of the model, because the model is saying what's actually happening, but that would influence the analysis of rates. But and you kind of already answered that, and I know that was part of what happened in last year too.
There are so many different ways people calculate this and do it. So we can bring different scenarios and options for the group to discuss what they feel is the best modeling, but it's all over the place.
In 2011, I think we've distributed this. We had an engineering firm come and do a full rate study, and was it 2011?
2009, wasn't it?
There was another one.
11.
One of them kind of floated around, and I thought we distributed it. And that was an engineering firm that came, and I mean, they looked at it from whatever perspective. I mean, that's something that they obviously a service that they provided, and they recommended specific rate increases. Do you think that there is do you gentlemen and committee members think that there's a place for every 5 years that we go out to an outside party and have them evaluate our rates independently to confirm what we're talking about here, that the pro forma is right, that we're really covering the costs? It's in essence a third party independent analysis? And is there a regular, should that be part of this recommendation?
In a word, yes. I think having outside a third party, independent third party coming in and reviewing this is, I think we can glean some valuable information off of it.
I think it depends on how robust our annual process is. If we have a really robust annual process and we're comfortable with it, I'd lean towards less, but I don't know, I'd be open to that, I guess, but
Is 5 years, I'm open, I'm all about a third party, fresh pair of eyes looking at stuff to validate, hey, you're doing it right, or you should maybe look at it this way, or whatever that is, right? It makes a lot of sense. If we're doing it the way we should be, is 5 years too frequent? I mean, is it a 10-year? I don't know. I mean, validation is important. I'm good with that.
The master plan that we're talking about. that
Yes.
will have some information in it about rate increases and rate structure, I would.
That's the plan, to have them do that.
Yeah, it's gonna have, I mean, when they have
And
those
you
capital
don't-
projects.
You don't do a study, your studies every 10, 20 years, not, I kinda agree with you, every 5 years I think is pretty quick. But you still have to do, like Dan says though, still be meeting and your numbers still looking good.
Oh, absolutely. Again, I think with part of the conversation on the annual cadence, we can agree that beginning of Q4, end of Q3, beginning of Q4, we're having a water and sewer committee meeting to discuss, look back as well as look forward, and here's the recommendations. Either we don't need to change the rates right now, here's our financial situation, or, hey, we're gonna have to make a change, or in 2 years, we're gonna have to make a change. I mean, that's the conversation on an annual basis. So in the next year, we're like, hey, remember last year we talked about 2 years out, we're gonna have to make a change. Now we're a year closer, we're still where we thought we were gonna be. So it should be no surprise to anyone as we march towards it.
I mean, I guess I'm with both Josh, and I was kind of thinking along the same lines as Randy, in that we would get the first one perhaps out of the way with the review that we have coming, and then we just need to kind of worry about or determine when and how we need to do that in the future.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I wasn't wedded necessarily to a 5 year, every 5 years. I think the timing of that can be discussed probably at a future date. But I think that would be the way to go, though, is having a third party come in whether it's 5, 7, 10, 12 years, whatever it may be. But I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, and as I came into the first committee meetings, one of the to the extreme was you'd go out to a third party rate analysis like we did, like that 2009, 11, whatever it was, and do that annually. And I kind of thought that was overkill. That was not necessary. But I agree with everybody else's expression that yes, or opinions that yes, there is a value to having a third party analyze your rates and your rate structures and make and doing that. I don't know what the cadence is. I threw out the 5 year as just as a discussion point. I don't know how. I don't know if we would recommend a process if we try to say what that frequency is. But I think we should definitely state that a periodic third party review, understanding that the people who are going to be on water sewer committee will most likely not be the 5 of us.
Well,
Go ahead.
that outside party that comes in and gives us that analysis might actually have a recommendation or a best practice to say, okay, here's baseline, right? The master plan's been done. Here's your rate structure. We would recommend this be reevaluated based on all facts in front of us today in 7 years, or whatever that looks like. And to Jeremy's point, we'll also know those big rocks, those big CapEx projects that are going to be recommended and prioritized, and that also might determine when rates have to be adjusted.
Right.
So again, we're going to have, this master plan is going to create a nice baseline for us to be able to go, okay, here's our path moving forward, and this is what it's going to cost. But the normal cadence the Q3, Q4 evaluation, I think that's a given.
And that should get easier, right?
Yeah.
Once you get that streamlined, right? I mean,
I
you
think
build those
so.
pro formas out, 3 different, versions of it, and
Yeah,
should be.
the heavy lift is over, in
Yeah.
my opinion,
I-
on what we got to get here. And
I think
now
so too.
just tweaking the process,
Right.
getting some outside input, being able to communicate this, make sure we don't wait 11
Right.
years to have this conversation again.
So when we say Q4, are we talking first of November, 1st of October? It's definitely not 1st of December because we're too far into budgeting.
No, I'm thinking like we're probably end of September, 1st of October. Like the conversation, the Water and Sewer Committee meeting, in my opinion, should happen before October 1st.
Okay, so you're now talking at the end of,
That's why I said we
last
started
month of
Q4.
Q3.
Now I'm like,
Okay.
end of Q3, beginning of Q4.
Well, I was thinking, when you were saying that, I was thinking we're done Q1, beginning of Q4, right? I mean, the work, the heavy lifting is really done in Q3.
Because the budgets, October, November, that
Right.
you're head first into all that. So this conversation has to happen going into that.
Right, exactly.
Because based on the rate change, if there is one to happen, would then impact the revenue projections for the following year. That then, the way the budgeting's done is the operating budget is then created to then support the revenue projections. So it sounds a little backwards, but that's how it's done. But the operating budget, that process is October, November, December. So
Right.
these conversations have to be had with you all, and then council should be done probably in September. And we're planning, the Q3 is us building up to a conversation
Sure.
before we get to Q4.
Should there be quarterly or semi-annual updates to the, like, presenting the pro forma with historical data to date, like every quarter or every half year, so we can, just as a regular reporting cycle to council? Is that something that council would, or this committee would want to see, and would it have value? Not trying to give you work, but considering you're already updating the model with historical information, it should be simply here's where we are. Just same as we have income tax reports on a monthly basis. It's really just a revenue too, because your long-term capital stuff isn't going to change.
No.
And really the short-term, the current year expenses shouldn't really have that dramatic of an effect on the model. Does that provide?
I think semi-annual, you guys are going to look at it monthly, quarterly for sure, but I
I
don't,
was thinking about-
semi-annually would be plenty.
I was thinking maybe a mid-year, as we get ready to kick off.
Unless you see something dramatic,
Yeah.
we'd like to know quarterly, but I mean,
I think this first year, as we were talking about comparing actuals to projection with what we're gonna start seeing coming in with the new revenue, I think that's gonna be more of an interest to make sure that settles where we said it was gonna settle, and you guys can see that. But, I mean, if it's a mid-year update going in, because if you think about the cadence of it, mid-year is when we're gonna have to start doing the legwork
Right.
to be prepared to have these conversations in Q3 to support the budget process in Q4.
But if we did every 6 months, that means we would have had our first update last month, end of March. And in the case of a rate change, as you just mentioned, it's not even having an effect on your revenue stream yet.
Right.
So it's too early.
Yeah, that's why I was, go ahead.
Yeah, I think in the kind of June, July
Yeah.
is when we could get, because like you guys were just saying, I mean, we'll get those the 2 rounds of the billing going out and that, so we don't know that in the first 3 months anyways of what those hard numbers are going to look like. But then majority of our capital is going to be out already. You're going to get pretty good numbers on your revenue stream coming in. Your operating, you're going to get a good idea of what is out there, because also when we're going from the cold to the warm season, that's when we start experiencing a lot of those breaks too, because the ground's moving on us. So we're going to have a decent idea what our overtime is going to look like, or our breaks and all that. So there's a lot of information that's kind of in those first 1 to 4 months that we can capitalize. So then in June and July, roughly, that's when we give you an update on that, and then we'll continue work, and then September, October is when you'll be seeing the next round.
And that June, July could just simply be the pro forma in a form of a report type of thing
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think for as far as this year is concerned, that's where I was kind of at June, July, August, because then we will have at least two billing cycles under our belt with what we got going on right now. So we would have a clear picture moving forward.
Correct. Like, so cycle 3 is your industrial commercial. That's a monthly cadence. So we're into that now, a couple months where cycle, I don't remember, does it go cycle 3, 2, 1, Jason, or 3, 1, 2? Does it matter? It's basically how the city's split up, so, but. Correct. And then 1 and 2 are your residential. So that's what's starting to hit now. So you're right, we'll have two billing cycles by the time we get to that mid-year. And I think so if a graph that shows these, so it's a very easy to read, follow, visual,
Yeah, projected and actual.
or overlapping each other, if that's acceptable to you all. Okay.
So do I hear that we're from a timing standpoint, there's an expectation that we're meeting in September?
First week of September.
Yeah.
Sounds like it.
You think first week of September? Or are we better off mid? Okay. So we won't set that at this point in time. But at least from a cadence standpoint, we to expect that during that second week or that second meeting of the third week of September when we have our second meeting, the expectation that we're going to be having a conversation about rates. When it comes to you've done this pro forma for water. What's it going to take to extend it to the other two utilities?
I mean, we have a bulk of the information, so now we know what information needs to go in there. I don't think you're not rebuilding a lot of stuff. It's just more of a plug and chug type thing. I mean, we know what information we need. It's just going to that, one of the two other enterprises and just pulling that information, plugging that in there. So I don't think it's going to be rebuilding it or anything like that. It's just plugging what we have in already.
Is it easy enough to split the operating costs between stormwater and wastewater? I mean,
Yeah, it's
this-
already,
okay,
those
there
are
is.
split out already.
Okay, all right.
Yep,
On
because
the
those are
cost
two
side.
different funds. Yep.
the cost.
So you'll have three different pro formas pretty much.
Okay.
I like your optimism. I do not share it. Because for 30 years, this is what I did, and all these, it should be easy, and the devil's in the details.
You
So
didn't hear
I-
me knock on wood over here, so that's
I was knocking for you. So I'll just keep asking you about that. So, I mean, we've really answered the third question. What's the frequency for reviewing these rates? And we said annually, and we're looking at a mid-September time for that. And the process for it, we've actually also answered that, and that's this pro forma model, Excel based, and that's something that's going to continue to be developed further from the who standpoint. Who should have the authority? Once again, going to Ohio Revised Code will speak to that. Who has that authority? But I think this is returning to that brief conversation earlier in the meeting, that the process should be the same regardless. It is administration at the September meeting says, here's what we recommend. Water and Sewer opines on that and then makes a recommendation. Either it goes back to the administration and says keep trying, or makes a recommendation to full council. And then when it comes to actually implementing the rate changes, then it's simply a process of following Ohio Revised Code's process. Either we make an ordinance that city council and Rob sets the water rates, and Ohio Revised Code 734.04A is pretty clear on that. So, we don't do that by ordinance. That is, we can support Rob in doing it like we did last year, but we can't change Ohio Revised Code unless we get our representatives and state senators to do so.
I'm not recommending we change of Ohio Revised Code.
Yeah. So, but
I mean, as long as we have a mechanism in which the body can say yay or nay, which to me that seems as though we have that in place with the accepting of a committee report. That's kind of where I sit. As long as we have something where the body can go on record and support or giving no support.
yeah.
I mean, does this statement need to be put into the water and sewer regs? Just a statement that says who does water and who does wastewater and who does storm?
I think this whole process needs to be. That's probably the place to do it. Is the water and sewer rules. And we're running out of time on this portion of the meeting.
I don't have the water and sewer in front of me, but I'm
I don't either,
pretty
and
sure that it's stated in the water and sewer rules.
Are those updated on the?
They are.
Thank you.
They are.
We are. I also realize now that I do not have committee reports here in front of me, so I'm going to take some quick notes, and hopefully the committee report stuff is.
So I guess in the water and sewer rules, so Rob, you brought it to Water and Sewer Committee and then to council as a courtesy. So I guess we could put that in the rules that that's required, and I don't know if we, and if it's, I mean, it passed unanimously in water and sewer. We went to full council, it was 9-1, so we did that. So
It's a common courtesy, but it's something that needs to be done. Make sure that common courtesy is
Well,
continued.
Right.
Yeah.
You can. There's a different.
need
way,
the feedback.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's different ways that this could be absolutely done. I mean,
Yeah.
the reality of the scenario is based on the ORC. We clearly defined that the service director has that authority.
Sure.
We're very fortunate right now that we have a strong businesswoman mayor that understands this stuff. We have an engineer that is very versed in capital projects and planning. We have a strong water superintendent that knows his business.
Mm-hmm.
So we take this team, and it's by committee that we take this, we've pointed this out. All this information comes from all these different points. We run these models, and it's like, well, if we don't do this, these are the results. So this is the decision and the point moving forward. We have a strong relationship with council, and we wanted to make sure you were informed of this, what was going to happen, and ask for your support. But we explained the why behind it, and that's the way we would love to intend to continue that relationship. The reality is, though, you have a service director that a mayor that's not financially sound to understand this, and more of a political figurehead, a service director that I'm going to do what I want to stockpile money, or I don't care, I'm not going to raise the rates, or whatever scenario you want to put out there. There could be a damning situation for our water fund and the people that work there and the citizens that rely on the service to be there. I'd hate for the situation to be like, water main break, sorry, we can't afford the people or the materials to fix this because we didn't see this water rate come or anticipate the need. So, and then you go to the legislative body if that changed. Hey, we present this situation to the legislative body. If you had the authority, the reality is, I'm not suggesting it would happen, but what if somebody didn't want to, or a group didn't want to offer political capital and,
you keep kicking the can, you
You
run
get-
it into the
I'm
ground.
not gonna
Okay.
vote for that, because I
Right.
don't want to
Folks.
lose my position. So there's so many scenarios on how you could play this out, so.
Okay. We
anyhow.
are at 5 o'clock, and I told the folks from West Park that we would switch over to that, so we need to wrap up this part of it. And I think there's some continued conversation, but we have a framework of what we want to do. So I'm going to make a recommendation that we meet again. We'll set that date maybe tomorrow night. And that between now and then, I will work with Rob at looking at water and sewer regulations and rules, and how those can be amended, and kind of summarizing. You'll see a summarization in the minutes on the 3 questions, kind of what we just verbally went through there, but our recommendation is to continue to meet, looking at how to implement what we've discussed tonight. And that's in the form of a motion for our recommendation.
Second.
And we have a second by Randy. All those in favor of recommending to meet again, and Rob and I working on water and sewer regs, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. And that part of the meeting is complete. And I would ask for a 1-minute recess so I can run in there and see if I have blank reports, and then we'll get started with West Park. We might just have, I might just circulate them tomorrow night.
That's fine. That'll work.
Moving on to the second agenda item, the West Park sanitary projects, kind of a continuation of our conversations from, I think it was February 16th. I just wanted to start this by making one of the guiding principles that I am using as I come to this as I look at the West Park these conversations in West Park. And it's, property owners have a responsibility and a requirement to properly dispose of the sewage created on their property. And generally you do this either via city provided sanitary sewers, which they connect to, or via owner maintained septic systems. Either way, there's an expectation that the systems work properly, that the connection to this sanitary sewer is good and working, or the septic is working. The flip side of that is that property owners do not have the right to send their sewage downstream, down off of their property to another one, and that's the bottom line here on this is that these you have to make sure that the West Park neighborhood, any neighborhood, is following by that general principle. And I've seen it in another community in particular where this wasn't the case, and it turned pretty darn ugly. And so I think, I think in my conversations with everybody, we're all with Robin and everybody, we're all working towards that. And long term, I definitely want to see sanitary sewers, providing service to all of West Park. And we have projects in place now to get us there, except for one or two outlying properties. Now the question is the implementation of it, and it's the how and the when and the costs and all that. And so, since our last meeting, I know that Dan and Brian had conversations with a handful of the affected property owners, and I want to get and Dan also had some thoughts on other options other than specifically a hard sanitary sewer connection. And I'd start this out with with a Dan, if you could,
Yeah.
Dan and Brian, if you guys can kind of fill the committee in with what you guys have discovered in conversations with specific property owners.
So I want to go back to like what I learned at the first meeting, right? So I'm kind of new to this, so I was just learned a lot at the first meeting. So I just want to kind of review that. So what I learned was there are 13 properties that we're talking about. 13. 5 of them already have sanitary sewer in front of the house that they have not connected to. Okay. So I think the Ohio Administrative Code requires them to connect, but that's really between the health department and those homeowners. So we're going to take those 5 off the city's agenda for now. So there's 8 properties that don't have sanitary sewers available. So of those 8, 2 of them we can't physically get gravity sewers to, right? Because if you follow the grade up, by the time it gets to those properties, the pipe is out of the ground, right? So there's 2 of them that are going to have they're going to have to look at some other either septic systems or grinder pumps. And anyway, so really we're down to 6 houses. Okay, so those 6 houses that we can install services to. Okay, so Jeremy presented his project, and it was $635,000 for 6 houses. So it comes out to about $106,000 per house. So we talked to the 6 houses. Councilman Bowman and I went on Saturday, March 23rd. Well, let me back up. A week prior to that, Jeremy sent out a letter to them just kind of notifying them of the project, right? So that went out to those 8 houses or the 6?
I sent it. I should have brought the letter
I
with
think
me.
it's 6.
I brought it. I sent it to the 6 houses because I was needing
Okay.
to know
Right.
lateral location. All
Right,
that.
okay. So we sent to those 6 houses. Councilor Bowman and I went to those 6 houses on Saturday, March 23rd. And basically, we took a copy of that letter, and Brian left his card, so we knocked on those. So one resident answered, and she was not interested. Her septic tank was serviced last fall. And we just asked about, are you interested in connecting the sewers if we did this, and how that would, and she was saying she was not interested. She doesn't have the money to connect. Jeremy talked to one resident that was in favor of the project. We talked to 2 others that were not interested. Actually, Jeremy, I think you talked to that one. You had a couple calls, so. Yeah, I had 1 call against. Right. Okay. And then, but the one that was against talked to the neighbor. He lives in Florida, whatever. But they didn't answer the door when we talked to the renter, but the owner of that, you had heard through the other.
So
Okay.
I didn't have any confirmation
Yeah.
from that homeowner,
Right.
but it was
Right,
from the
just okay through
neighboring
another neighbor.
property.
Okay, and then there's two that there was no response. They didn't answer the door, so we just left the business card and maybe they're in the audience tonight. I'm not sure. So to summarize all of that, so we have 1 yes, 3 no's, 2 unknowns. That was the result of it. No. Mr. Bowman, have you had any, you left your card there, did anybody contact you since then?
So I guess I would say that I did have a few additional conversations. One of which was very adamant about the fact that he thought that pursuing of these projects might be a waste of money. He is happy with his septic system as it stands now, and a lot of the other folks who have septic systems in the area around him had voiced the same, that they were okay with the service that they had based on the septic system. It was functional. It was where it needed to be operating for them to.
Was this one of the 6 that we knocked on the door? Or a different, one of the other?
It's a different,
Different.
but same,
Okay.
same group.
Okay,
And that's kind of where the other feedback that I
okay,
had
so you had
heard.
one other, okay.
Yeah.
Jeremy, did you have any other calls since we spoke last?
From the letter I sent out, we sent out Friday. We just had to put it in the doors because couldn't
Okay.
get in the mail before
Okay.
time.
All
A homeowner called today, said she couldn't make it to the meeting.
Okay,
Pretty much what that letter was doing was just inviting them here so that way
Yeah.
they could hear about the project, ask questions about all
Okay.
that. So I kind of explained the project through her and all that kind of stuff. She said if the sanitary was there, she would tie into it, but again, it comes down to the financial side. So
Mhm.
if we decided to run through there, I think we would have to search grant opportunities, but she was saying she couldn't make that connection to the sanitary.
financially, she could not
Financially,
make
she
that.
would not
Okay.
be able to.
Is that one of the 6?
That is one of the 6, correct?
Oh, so then,
I just received that call at
okay.
1:30
So
today.
that must have been, I guess, folks, I don't want to get into addresses, so it's kind of confusing. So I don't want to get into specific addresses of who's saying yes
So
and no.
so
Okay, all right,
so previously, not today, I received 2 calls.
yeah. And
One
this is
was
okay,
said, yeah, good with it. The other one was
no,
didn't want it or anything like that. And then today, from the letter that we sent out Friday, she called asking about the project, explained it and all that, and she couldn't make it to the meeting because she works
Okay.
right now. And she called and said, if it's there, yeah, I would like to tie into it. I think it'd be great for the property, but I just
okay.
so
All right, so it's probably one of the unknowns, I'm thinking, so, okay.
it might be.
So,
Correct.
okay, so one of the unknowns, it was a yes, but can't afford, right?
Correct.
Okay. So my concern after the chewing on that meeting, so we're going to spend $635,000 that the majority of the people of these 6 don't want, and we're going to force them to pay $7,000 to $15,000 to tap in with money they don't have. So there's a financial concern for sure. And so if we do this, I just want to make sure, I know the grant money is unknown at this point, but if I just don't want to build a bridge to nowhere where we're spending $670,000 and nobody has the money to tap in. And historically, we haven't enforced that. So I want to make sure that we're spending taxpayer money wisely, and that if we're going to build this, it's going to benefit the neighbors.
A point of clarification, it is not the city's responsibility to enforce that.
I understand.
That's Hancock Public Health.
I understand. But I don't want to spend,
And I think you bring an interesting point. Here we have extended sewer to an area, and we have 5 properties on it that is not taking advantage or is not using it. The quandary that I have is that if you have you mentioned one property owner that just had their septic serviced in 2023 and can't afford to connect to a sanitary if it was there. I don't want to force that person to connect if they have a functioning system. But if they don't have a functioning system, I don't want them to rebuild another septic system. I want
Agreed.
them, And what, so as you were, and I understand what you're saying, and the analysis, 100,000 plus per existing house is you're right, that's a tall price. But two things come to mind is that I put out as for discussion purposes is going forward. I don't want people that have septic now to replace it with more septic. I want them to connect, and the only way they can connect is to have it there. That's one, and the second opposing thing is for folks that have functioning septic, and we extend. I don't want them to force them to lose that investment in their septic just because we happen to extend. And this is kind of a quandary with Ohio Administrative Code. If you build it, you're forced, but that's a waste of the citizens' money.
Well, I think thus far the narrative has been that these folks are operating on non-functional septic systems, and that's just not the case from what we found in our research and talking to folks, that they're good with what they have, and I
But are they good with it, or are they actually meeting the effluent requirements?
Yeah.
Is there testing been done on them to say that they are good?
well, I mean that would be
Just
between
because
them and the
toilets flush and they go down.
well, I mean that would be between them and the health department, would it not?
Right. It'd
I-
be between somebody.
I think
But
that's,
you need to make sure they're working properly.
I think that's the whole point here, is what I was gonna get to here, is that we're assuming that we've been told that, let me take a quote here, hang on. The health department openly admitted all existing units were failing. This is a health issue for our neighborhood. Okay, so is that a true statement? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's true or not, so.
Health department lied, right there's our health department, did our health department lie to the?
Robin, time out. Because when you, I'm gonna.
We're gonna
But
invite
Robin,
people
what
to,
I want you to, when you talk, we have to be up here so we can record it.
but Robin, I would
is-
like you to, I
is-
would like
is-
to hear from Robin, and I would like to hear from the health department if we could.
Okay, so the health department folks are here?
But, yes, they are. yeah.
Okay. Is Lindsay, okay, I'm sorry, Lindsay, I don't recognize you. Yeah, Lindsay, could you come up to the microphone?
And Eric also, I think. Well, if you want, I mean,
Lindsay and, I'm sorry, Eric, your name is?
This is Kurt.
oh,
Kurt.
Kurt, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Kurt,
Kurt Schroeder, yeah, I think we were here, you were here last meeting, okay. So, jump in.
Here, I can ask you a question and get
And
you
make-
started.
Make
Okay.
sure that the light is on the push the red button and,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
good.
So what data, do you have any data to support or not of whether these systems are failing or not? So in West Park, so we're talking about, I think I gave you the address. When I met with these folks last week, so I gave you the addresses of these 6 properties we're talking about. And and then I'd ask Jeremy the same question. What information do we have in our files that suggests they are failing or not failing? So.
I'll let you jump in too. Oh, we do not have any data for those addresses that we discussed last week unless you found something since.
Okay. So you don't have any information, so you've never made a determination that they are failing?
That's
Okay. All right.
Is there a process to so you know you have septic at these places? Is there an inspection that is done? Is there because this seems like a repeat.
Sampling or anything?
This seems like a repeat of the bluebonnet conversations. Is there a requirement on the property owner to validate with Hancock Public Health on a regular basis that their systems are functioning? I mean, because if they fail, how would anybody know? And so, what can you talk me through that process again?
Yes. So I think the first thing to be mindful of is this project, I don't know how long that sewer has been available out there. That was done before I was probably ever around. I don't know. But, you know, when a project is done and we know that there's gonna be sewer available, good practice is to work with the engineer, which I think we've found out with the Blue Bonnet, how that process should go. And then we work with those property owners to get them connected. Unfortunately, law requires us to make the individuals connect. It doesn't matter if that sewage system was put in, you know, 2 years ago, or it was put in 25 years ago. There's nothing in the regulations that require us to say, well, as long as we know we have a properly working system, they don't have to connect. And that's unfortunately out of our control. Now, with this situation out there, now that we know that there's specific properties, you know, we're always getting property sales every month. I mean, we can always flag them, so if it does change hands, that's one way that we could do an immediate evaluation to be able to say, okay, we know that there's a sewer process happening. We can work with that property owner to say, okay, let's make sure we can keep the system functioning as is for the moment, and then let them invest their resources into connecting to sewer if it's coming here in the next year or two. I know we've worked with Jeremy on a couple other locations like that. The other thing we could do is, you know, now that I know about it, authority gives the Board of Health the right to go to those properties and say, okay, we understand there's sanitary sewer there. We're gonna work with you under 2 years. You have then to make this connection. I know you mentioned some financial concerns. There is some water pollution control loan grant funds available for 2024, but there's a financial and some other stipulations that the property owner has to meet, but we can have those conversations and work with them through it that way.
Lindsay, are you willing to do that on those 5 existing properties now, then? Send that letter?
Yes,
Okay, you are, okay, good.
but I'm
Okay.
just gonna put the stipulation out there, you know, that as working with the city of Findlay, we have been notified that your address, it has sanitary sewer available.
Sure.
And you will have 2 years from whatever
Yeah,
date
sure,
that is.
okay, good, okay. So back to this quote, the health department openly admitted all existing units are failing. Do you know of this?
I did not personally make a statement to
Okay.
that nature. I don't,
I don't think we made that statement last, is that what you're referring to?
Was made, it's on record.
Okay.
may I ask who made that statement to you?
I made the statement, you made the, at the last meeting, it was brought up. I repeated it, and then it was repeated again. If we play it back, we'll see who made it, but first of all.
Well, wait, you want to come up to the mic? Or?
Okay. First of all, you're not Mr. Krasinski, are you? No. Okay, is that the right name? Krajewski, okay. Mr. Krajewski, who works for the health department, will openly admit they don't even know where the sewers are, where the septic systems are planted at. They have no clue. You can walk out here, don't know if it's there, don't know if it's there. Is that a true statement? Do you know where it's located on the property?
Which specific septic?
Of any of them properties?
On West Park?
Yes.
I don't know that we have records on them.
They don't have no records of where they're located. They've already looked.
But I mean,
They've already
location
looked.
and admitting that they're a failure are two separate things.
And it's on record. If we play the records back from last thing, it's on. Don't wave your hands. It's on record. We'll play the video back. But the whole thing is, there's one septic system that's been put in the last 20 years. How long do you think them septic? We have a professional there that will tell you how long them septic tanks last. The newest one installed in West Park is in the audience today, and it's probably within the last 20 years. She is the only one that's had one put in. The rest are back from the 50s and 60s and 70s. That's where it is. The whole thing is, if we didn't have the failing system, as soon as my toilet stops working, I'm going to get a 55-gallon drum and start throwing it in my backyard. Because that's what we were. That's how come we have health systems. That's how come we have sanitary sewers. You guys are worried. Dan's worried about it, $600 and some thousand. We have these people where we have sewage in those catch basins. We're getting rid of it. Don't shake your head no at me, Brian. It's proven.
No, it's not.
Well, whatever. Has anybody did a sample out of it?
Yes,
We
have.
did. It makes no difference. The whole thing
Well,
is,
either
is
it does
that
or it doesn't.
the whole thing is, we have the project in place. We have people that have asked for this. It is not fair for these people to contaminate our properties with their sanitary sewers.
I agree with that.
It's not fair.
I agree with that.
And there's, like
But
I
it's
said,
not
there's
happening.
one person. There's one person. Sir, speak. This is Mr. Welling.
James Welly, I'm Robin's husband.
Thank you, James.
First of all, do any, you fellows might have, does anyone in this building have any experience with sewage system installations, private sewage system installations? Then how could you stand here and talk about it? How can you? Yeah, how can you? How can you?
Well,
All right,
that's kind of
I
like
carried
apples and oranges, though,
I
because-
carried a
hold on just a
private
second.
sewer.
Brian,
because some
Brian,
individual-
Brian,
I
stop.
carried a
Mr.
private
Welly.
sewage installation license. It was in Sanka County for over 10 years. I was in the home building business for 25. On a daily basis, surrounded with sewage system, private sewage system installations, water wells. I can tell you multiple times when a brand new sewage system, private sewage system with twin 1,000 gallon tanks, 900 feet of lineal feet of leach field failed within 2 years. So we're talking about systems that probably been in for 40 years, maybe 50 years, probably have a 500 gallon tank and maybe 50 feet of sewage system. And you're saying here there's no off-fall for all the little liquid coming out of them houses?
I mean,
you
that-
guys are
that's
dreaming.
great that you
know?
have that experience.
You
That's
have
what I'm
no
trying to say.
knowledge to base
That's
this
great,
on.
but you haven't individually evaluated these properties, so how can you know?
I just explained why I know. There's
Mr.
no
Welly,
way.
Mr.
There's
Welly.
no way that first of all, a concrete septic tank probably only lasts for maybe 40 years before it starts disintegrating. Have you ever replaced a sewage tank that fell apart that's rotting just from the sewer gas in it? You know anything about sewer gas in concrete septic tanks? I mean, this is just an absurd conversation, guys.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Welly.
I'm not saying that they're not failed. I'm just saying we don't know. I mean, so what I was trying to get to here is I think we need to do.
we,
I mean,
We'll
I'm
call you when we have
Okay.
more
all right.
questions. Thank you.
So, all right, thank you. All right. So what I learned when I met with the health department is they have a list of contractors and they'll for $150 they will dye test. Actually, Mr. Welly, are you familiar? Is that something that you have experience is dye testing the way to test these systems? I mean, basically they take the lid off, they do an inspection of the tank, and then they do a dye test. And basically, if you see the dye in the next few days, the system is not working. But if you never see the dye, then the system is working. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's one way to get some hard data as to whether these systems are failing or not. And
Mr. Welly, yeah, please.
That'd definitely be a start. Another start would get a Hancock County license if we're throwing money around like whatever here, or we're too poor to do it, whichever case we're talking about at the moment. Get a licensed Hancock County private sewer installation contractor and say, hey, we're going to go out, we're going to evaluate these
That's what I'm talking
situations and
about.
take care of it
Right.
rather than pontificating on nonsense.
well, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Let's hire a licensed contractor to. I understand that the process is doing a dye test, but I'm sure there's just an
Well, there's more
inspection
to
too.
it.
There's more to it. Okay, all right. So is $150 a fair price to do an evaluation of a residential
In
system?
this day and age, I'd say probably not, but
Okay.
you'd have to contract a
Okay. Well,
So-
that was the number that I was told. So
Yeah.
okay, but I just want you to be clear. If there is sewage going off somebody's property onto somebody else's, that is unacceptable.
There's
And-
no, s-
and-
I'd stake my life, there's no system out there that is keeping all their liquid on site. It's impossible, unless there's nobody living in the house.
Right.
There's no sewage leach field of that age
But is the-
that is functioning anymore
Sure.
without being bypassed.
So once it goes to the leach field, and what do we call that water? Gray water or what, I mean, is that allowed to go to somebody else's property at that point, once it goes to the leach field, or?
Systems are supposed to be, private sewage system, and the health department would nod their head if I'm talking silly here, have to be assimilated on site. There's not supposed to be any discharged off your property of your sewage affluent.
Is that right? Okay. Okay, well, that's, I didn't know that.
A
Okay,
sewage
okay.
leach
So-
field
all right.
is trenches with stone that absorb it. And as I said earlier, I've seen systems that quit absorbing within 2 years of being brand new, let alone 40 years. They get filled up with gray matter. They don't function anymore.
Is the reason why you think these are fair, because the bedrock is so shallow? Is it all tied to the bedrock or not necessarily? There's other factors. I mean,
Other factors.
okay, so is there enough of soil above the bedrock to ever have a functioning septic, or leach field, rather?
Some rock is porous and doesn't enter into it. Probably the biggest culprit for failures is clay soil, but I don't think that's a problem out there.
Oh, it's mostly
So whatever factor.
fragmented rock, whatever, just.
Yeah, fragmented rock will do better than sort of sand, probably the best
Okay.
second thing.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Welly.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
A question to Lindsay or Kurt, just concerning kind of proactive testing. Is that something that, where does the health department play into that? If you have a sense that there's a failing septic system, and I'm also kind of interested in the responsibility between Hancock Public Health and City of Findlay on something like this. So, if we would say that one of these properties, I think we should be looking at all 6 of them and ensuring that they're functioning.
I would say all 14, Grant.
Or all
All 14.
14.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
So is that a service that Hancock Public Health provides, or that you do, or walk me through this process?
You're talking like an evaluation of the septic system.
Yeah, we have 14
Yeah.
we have 14 systems out there.
And like Dan said, we have a list of registered contractors that can perform this evaluation with the dye testing and, digging up the tank if they need to, and that kind of equipment to do what they need to do, and the follow through to make sure, does the dye show up the next day? Is there dye showing up? What's on the system? Is there just a tank? Is there a leach field? Is there discharging to an outfall? All that stuff is evaluated by that evaluator.
Does a public health department have the right through Ohio Administrative Code to mandate that a property has such a test done? Is that something that you could have done at Hancock Public Health's expense?
So we would have the right to do it based off of, we have a reason from a city council body that says, hey, we have this concern of sewage systems in this area. So that would trigger us the ability to go on those properties to start looking at that. We do not have the manpower or, the tools to do that evaluation. We would look to the contractor list that we shared with Dan to have that done. Do we have the financial means to do it that way? Unfortunately, no.
So 14 times 150 is just shy of $2,000. We're not talking
May I
about.
ask where you got the 150?
I thought you had said that. I don't. Did you, or Jeremy? I don't know where I got that.
That's all my number.
Okay.
I have a home septic in Seneca County. We have to do an annual inspection every year, and I have a contractor come in. It costs me $150 to do it.
Is
So
it-
that's something different. That's
Oh,
for your
okay.
operation and maintenance
Yeah.
permit.
Is that a dye test or not? Or,
No, they do. They open up visual inspection. I got a mound system, so it's a kind of different
Okay.
system.
All
than
right. So
leach
that
field.
150, that's probably not a real number then. Okay. So, all right.
Probably call one of those
Yeah,
contractors and
okay.
get it.
I'm gonna say you're gonna be closer to the 1,500 to 2,000 mark. Now, mind you, the more digging they have to do, the more money that's gonna get involved.
But back to Grant's point, so you have the authority to enter those properties, I guess, with proper notification and all that kind of thing, but, okay,
Right. As long as we have a reason. So if we present and they're, why are you here, you know?
yeah, right.
We have this concern, we have this, that we're working with the city sewer and water committee
Yeah.
on, and we're just gathering data at this point.
Mhm.
So Lindsay, I just want to clarify something you said. You said that if you have reason to inspect, such as city council requesting it. How about if you have neighbors requesting it? Is that also considered? Because understand the genesis, the start of this is West Park Block Watch, who has raised the concern and said that they're seeing. So we're speaking through them, and I just, that's still valid reasons. Okay.
Yes, typically what we do, if anybody in the community has a concern about something along the way, you know, if they're out walking and they see a ditch full of sewage and they call in with those concerns, we ask them to fill out a, nuisance complaint form is what we call it. That way we can register the location, we can register their concerns, and then we would kind of treat that no different if those individuals wanted to call us and, you know, or send us an email even that says, hey, we have this interest, would you please look into it? We would take that email and act upon it as well.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you coming in and talking with us on this. Dave Beach, I hate to put you on the spot, but
Oh, get him up there.
come on, young man. This will teach you not to walk into a meeting with me. At the end of the last meeting, Robin had asked that we come out and investigate a couple of spots or a specific catch basin. And could you just kind of relay the conversations that we had walking in today and tell us where we're at?
The first time we went out, this was, it was before the last meeting. We went out there, I heard that we had, I think I read it in the paper that somebody said sewage in a catch basin in front of the old Nagy's at the end of Newell Street. We went out there, it was dry at that time, no smell, nothing in the sewer, no indication of any sewage or debris or anything from sewage in the catch basin. After the meeting, the last one, I went out the next day. Very low flow, there was no smell. We did take a sample, took it back to our lab. It was pretty clear. I told the lab guys, don't even run it. I said there was no smell, there was no indication of sewage. So we didn't run any lab results on that. The one we did collect today, we went out there, same thing, very low flow. There was like a rotten egg smell to it. Collected another sample, took that back to our lab. We ran one test, a COD. We'd like to do a BOD test on that, but that's a 5-day test. We also I had them do a E. coli test. I won't have the results of that test until tomorrow morning sometime. That's a 24-hour test. So right now I can't determine one way or the other if it's sewage. I mean, there was some indication by the COD test. It's a test that you can test organics in the water, which is an indication of could be sewage, but it could be that test also tests for inorganics as well. So it's not as accurate as far as organics as a BOD test may be.
Did you have enough sample to run a BOD?
No, we didn't collect. I mean, like I say, there was very little flowing through there even after the half an inch of rain we had last night. It was still low flow. We actually reached down in there, collected what we could. We probably got a half a quart size. But I can go back out. We'll see what the E. coli test comes back tomorrow. If we got high E. coli numbers, we can go back, collect another sample more often, and see if we're picking up anything.
So we're supposed to get a lot of rain this week, so.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
So would you, when you get these test results, would you share them with myself and with Robin or Jeremy?
Sure.
I will distribute to the rest of this committee and to Robin,
Okay.
just so we can all have that. And just because,
Okay.
you know, this was a specific complaint that the West Park neighborhood made, and so I want us to proactively monitor that.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's no problem. Like I say, the test result from the COD test, our normal raw influent, it probably runs between, say, 300, 400, average, say, 300 milligrams a liter. The results we got back from the catch basin today, we came back about 92. So that's not too high.
I guess my question would be, would those readings be perhaps on par with, say, gray water or something to that, which is perfectly?
It could be, you know, like say, if there is a couple septics, their outlets are tied to that storm sewer, and that septic system isn't working great, or their outlet, I mean, there could be some, or that, I don't know, because I don't test outlets at
Yeah.
septic systems. That could be a normal reading. I can't say one way or the
I'll do
other.
some investigation on that.
Yeah.
Look and see.
Hey, Dave, if you were to detect any waste, sanitary waste like that, are you required to notify the health department or anything, or what's the process after you find something like that?
They're probably, I don't know if they have a permit. Lindsay would be able to tell you that if there's a permit limit on certain parameters like E. coli, VOD, suspended, that I'm not sure.
Coming out, which,
So we got a reading of 92.
So, Josh, to kind of answer your question, if it came to me and say we knew there was no septic systems there, then we would have to do an investigation on our side and say, okay, someone's got something tied in here that shouldn't be tied into that. Knowing that there's septic systems, then I would use the health department route, because that's the route I got to go, because they got to do an investigation, and then we would have to come to you guys for extension and all that. So it kind of depends on what situation, but in this situation, I would reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we got, what we're finding from a catch basin.
So just to clarify, if I could, you said that an abnormal reading, as far as you're concerned, would be 300 to 400 parts per million
Milligrams per liter.
milligrams.
Parts
Okay.
per million.
But
Same
this
thing.
was at 92.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm going off our average raw, what's coming into the
what's coming
plant.
in the sewer system.
I mean, that, yeah, I mean, that's a much larger system. I mean, it could be, we have a rate event, it's diluted, you're gonna get a lower BOD reading, yeah.
Lindsay, do you have those, measurements for us, or not the measurements, but the limits for what is supposed to be coming out of a properly working?
So
Septic
that's gonna
system.
go off of, I apologize, I hope I picked it all up here. So, fecal coliform at a level that's equal or greater than 5,000 colonies per 100 milliliters of liquid is determined in 2 or more samples of liquid when 5 or fewer samples are collected, or in more than 20% of the samples, 5 samples of the liquid are collected. Then there's water samples that exceed 1,030 E. coli counts per 100 milliliters and 2 or more samples when 5 or fewer samples are collected. So I think we're kind of
Below
in the
that.
same,
Yeah.
but these are the standards that. I
And they don't
think
have
are-
any standards on anything except for E. coli, is that correct?
And those standards are coming off of the public health, nuisance, which is has fewer standards, I guess you would say.
So Dave, you'll share that information when you get it.
I sure will.
Great, thank you.
Could public health request
Yeah.
a copy of those as well?
Yeah,
Give you a
yeah,
copy,
Yep.
what you got there?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
yeah, we'll get that to you. Yeah, Robin.
The property that we're talking about is right on the corner of Newell and Lima Avenue. It's a project that did not get finished. It was a project that was started in 2015. The project did not get finished. Mr. Nagy owns multiple properties. They're lifelong residents. He has seen the toilet paper in the catch basin. He has no reason to spend the money. he has a business across the street that has sewer, or, sanitary sewer, city sewer. Where his house is, it does not. He has seen the toilet paper in there. There is no reason for Mr. Nagy to come to our block watch meeting, the only one that he's ever been to. Jeremy was there. He knew why he was there. There's no reason for Mr. Nagy to ask for this to be done or to make up that there's toilet paper in his catch basin. There's no reason for this man to lie. We have the money allocated to finish this project. It occupies 3 houses. It occupies Mr. Nagy's house, a house on Newell, and a house on Lima Avenue that sits there. It's 3 properties that's affected. It's a property that the city let my husband won't let me say that. It's a project that was never finished. It was started in 2015, and they walked away from it, and it was never finished. We have money allocated correctly for this, to finish this project for Mr. Nagy, correct? It's in capital, it's already put out. There is no reason to deny this man who has lived a lifelong resident of our neighborhood not to have it. You guys can test whatever you want and do that, but that project should be finished. There's money allocated for it, and Mr. Nagy deserves it. Another thing, too, we have another, before you cut me off, because I think we have the gentleman in the audience, too. We have another man who is on the verge of installing a new septic system, only to maybe have a new sewer system put in front of his house. That man needs to be addressed and needs to be told, okay, if you spend your $30,000 to put your new septic system in there, we're not going to force you. And you can't give him that right. If a sanitary sewer goes in front of your house, you are required by law to connect to it. That house, while you guys are doing all your testing and all your things, them 2 people need to be addressed. Our Block Watch is asking for them 2 people to be addressed specifically. We want our whole neighborhood. Why you're letting all this flood our neighborhood, we don't understand. It's a money thing, I understand that, but we're wasting money all over town for everything else, but we're not worried about sanitary sewers.
I mean, that's false. That's false. We
well,
have been meeting here.
We have been. You have been, Grant. I shouldn't have said
You-
that. But I'm saying that we need the one project. We need Chris Nagy's project addressed. I don't see any reason not to continue and address that. Jeremy, is there any reason not to finish that project?
I mean, I have a set of plans right here, so, I mean, it's ready to go. If I get the go-ahead, it's ready to go. But
Mr. Chairman, I've spoken directly to Mr. Nagy, and I did that this afternoon. And we spoke specifically about this project, and he indicated to me that it would be a waste of money, and he was not interested.
Okay.
Well, that's not what Chris told. That is why Chris was at our project.
He said the same thing to our engineer.
Can I jump? You said that 1601, I don't want to run out address, but that property owner's here.
I think.
Well, I was going to say, I'd like to talk with them.
Yep.
Afterwards. You guys can.
Afterwards.
Thank you.
I just don't want anybody to spend any more money. As far as Chris Nagy, that's a big turn in my book because I have fought very hard for him for this.
Robin, you and I
guess
you and I
should
are on
just-
the same page. I don't want to see any new septic systems out there.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And while you're correct, the law is the law. I'll tell you, I think that in this case the law is wanting because it puts an undue, in my view, it puts an undue financial burden on people with a functioning and
Correct.
emphasis on functioning septic system. But the minute it isn't functioning, then I'd like to, and I understand the pickle that Hancock Public Health's in. They don't interpret the law. They have to enforce. I wish there was leeway in it, and because I think that the fact that there's not leeway in it prevents us from the ultimate goal of getting these people on a sanitary. So personally, that's what I'm working towards, is getting everybody on a sanitary. But you got to give us an opportunity to
And
do
I
that.
understand that. I'm all for the testing. I will by Tuesday night. I'll bring up where they did, the health department did say that, because I reiterated, I said, and everybody says, well, and somebody on council even said, well, you just reiterated what so-and-so said, and I wasn't even sure if it wasn't Dave over there, but none of them were functioning. I'm not even sure it wasn't Dave, but, yeah.
So, I want to, moving forward on this, to Jeremy. So we have two projects of,
I guess I'm out of my league. I guess I should go back to going to the swimming pool and saying the heck with all this.
no, you
because-
shouldn't. No.
No, we're
Robin?
not- No.
So we have two projects that we're looking at. One project feeds, or is going to service how many of the 6?
So I have one that's going to, I can service all 6. I have a cost estimate that will cover that. So the Newell area, and I have all this broken out, so I don't know if you want to give you numbers, but the Newell area is about 300, and that's with some contingency. So that'll give us inspection and all that kind of stuff, and if we run into problems. And then up north towards the Tappan, there was a couple properties. That is 115,000, 120,000. And then the Lima Avenue ones, I mean, I have a cost estimate, but I need to work with the property owners. Because like I said before, right now, I'm at 5 foot deep. If I have to go 500 feet and run at 0.4%, I'm going to be at roughly 2 feet deep. Well, if they're coming out at 3 feet deep, it's going to be, I can't run gravity. And then also with that is, with that distance that you're running, if you're running at 0.4%, there's not much liquid going through there, then your liquid's going past your solids, and then you're going to have a backup in your main line. So you'd rather have a little bit more slope on that to keep everything moving. So it's something that, you know, I'd like to get outside of that. I work directly with them, not in here, on, you know, if there's a solution that we can come up with that, but that will be something I'll work with them. So I have cost estimates for that, for the immediate 6, if you want to say. 4 of them, I have plans right now. The other 2, if you give me a week, we can get that drawn up and go. So, I mean, we can address them as soon or slow or whatever you want to say. You know, if you give me the go, I can go.
I'll get to that in just a second. So, so we said Newell was 300, and how many houses are on the 300,000? Is that 4? 4. Okay, there's 4 there.
properties.
Okay, 4 properties on the Newell for 300 grand, and then 2 properties on Tappan for 120,
Right.
and that only adds up to 420.
Well, then you have your Lime Avenue ones. That is
Are-
the
Or down at, I'm trying to get to the 630 number.
yeah.
Right.
So those are the ones I can address immediately. Then the remaining 2 that were on Lime Avenue, that's where your other 220,000 is coming in.
Okay, 220. And the 220, those are that was like the grinder pump and those.
That would be so yeah. That
Oh,
would
that
be
includes those.
So yeah. So that 635 included all of the West Park that I could address.
Oh, then okay.
Yeah.
Oh, then okay.
Yeah.
So then what I said earlier was incorrect. Then
Yeah. So
okay.
that 635 that I put in capital, that
includes. That's for all 8.
that covered the ones we identified.
That's
Yes.
for 8,
Yes.
not 6.
Correct.
Okay, then I stand corrected, folks. Then okay, so that 635 is divided by 8, not divided by 6, so it's less per house. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Randy, there was a discussion about an alternative technology that potentially could work. And Jeremy and I talked about it a little bit. And basically, it's an aeration system. It's a 2-stage tank with an aerator, and it goes through a filter and then a UV light, and then it's actually a more active system. But actually, in talking to the health department, they're saying that according to the EPA, that's like the 3rd option, and you have to get special permits for it. And they really don't want that technology because it requires maintenance, and it requires and then if that aeration system goes down, it calls out to a contractor, and they have to come in and service it. And so, I mean, it's a little more maintenance. You're running a little wastewater treatment plant, and so and that is not the preferred option in the EPA. So, I guess I would take that off the table at this point.
We have this couple that's in the audience, and they have a specific case is that something that they just need to work with you? Because there's a sale, if I understand, there's a sale of the property that's contingent on this. Is that your situation? Okay.
So the way I would present it, and I mean, we've done this past with Lindsay as well. You know, she did call, it was a year or two, or it might have been 2 years already now. But hey, are you running a project? And I said, at this point, we are not running a project down through there. But if we can reach to them, so now we're to today, if I can reach them, we can come up with a solution. I would work with Lindsay and say, hey, we're going to be having a project. It's not going to happen within the next 30 days, but in the X amount of days it's going to happen, or this is when it's going to happen. Can you give them a leniency on that? Because we're going to be able to put a sanitary down through there. But, you know, the biggest thing is I would have to work with them, because where their outlet comes out of their house is going to play a crucial factor on how we're going to get that sanitary from the house to the main line.
Okay. So
we could work that out
you're
with
gonna
the
work
health
that
department.
that
offline.
So then this is the conversation or questions to the committee. I mean, I've let my bias be known. I like sanitary. I would rather have sanitary than septic. Dan, one of the things in your analysis is you're looking at existing units. I not having detailed on what other properties are here, but if we extend, do we make other properties there more able to support housing or to be developed? I mean, because the one thing is and Robin keeps making this point, and I agree with her, is that we don't want to kick this can down the road, and you want to get that sanitary there at some point in time. It doesn't matter if you do it now or 10 years from now. It's going to be expensive, and we're only doing so many units. People aren't going to build out there if they're going to be putting in septic, and I don't want people building out there and putting in septic. I mean, plain and simple.
Do you remember at the last meeting, I went up there and I went up to the map and I said, okay, we extend this down Newell, and there's all these other rectangles there.
Yeah.
Are these developable? And the answer was no, because I think that was the answer. So if we extend it, there's no more properties adding on. Was the answer I received, I think.
With the new, I mean, without going through and seeing what a full survey is, I mean, I know most of that is kind of falling towards Lima Avenue. It's kind of tough to say, but we're pretty shallow at the end of Newell now. I think we're roughly 3.5 feet deep. So you could extend it a little bit more, but get it all the way down to the airport, like that area. We'd have to do some surveying to verify, but looking at how flat it is across there, it'd be tough. But you could still have the sanitary there. You would just have to have another mechanism to either lift it up to your sanitary. You couldn't use gravity to do it. So it'd just be another method.
How about, to your point, Grant, down Tappan, so you'd be going towards the sugar beet. Okay. All right. I mean, if we built that sewer, could there be other potential homeowners in that direction? The road kind of goes down and turns, and
yeah, it turns into LaGrange.
Yeah.
But the sugar beet is fed by a sanitary that runs behind along the I-75 fence. So I wouldn't see. I mean, with the size of that, I would just run a 6-inch up to that to service those couple properties, and then maybe extend. There's an open field right now. If that ever wanted to develop, then it would be serviceable from there. But I mean, if we wanted to run even farther into the east of Greenwood, I would use a different method of that, because you have another street over there that has a sanitary that you probably stretch from. So there is a potential to expand it, but without knowing what it is right now, we would just set it up to be. We would make it the deepest we can make it at this point, so it always has a possibility.
and you'd size it only for the houses right there. You wouldn't size it for some future.
Well, that's dropping into an 8-inch right now. So on Logan, so it's not like you can't go any bigger than an 8-inch because you'd be choking it down anyways. So with the residential down through there, the biggest it'd be would be an 8-inch. But I could see from expansion in the future, I would assume it would just be whatever those residentials, because anything east of that would be coming off of a separate line that would come off of Greenwood or something like that.
All right, so Grant, so your answer to yours, I think it's limited. Okay.
So-
Let me, I think what the question, do we feel like do we need data on whether these systems are failing or not in order to move forward? Or I mean, are we just gonna accept that they're all failing? Or, I don't know, do we, and earlier, Grant, you asked me, you were saying 6, and I said, oh, maybe we need to test all 14. But actually, the 5 that have access to sewer now, there's no reason to test those. They just have to tap in. I mean, it's just, there's no reason to study that.
That is not my concern, because that is not the responsibility of the city.
Agreed.
And
Yeah.
so that
So-
is between
so I'm gonna
Hancock
back off.
Public Health
Yeah,
and those properties.
I agree. So I'm going to back off what I said earlier. It doesn't need to be. We don't. There's no reason to study that.
Yeah,
right?
I'm
Okay.
I'm thinking
So-
of the 6.
Right,
And
okay.
and we have 2 separate.
And I am now in
It might be
agreement.
one project from our view of it, but it's really 2 separate lines. And if one of the lines is feeding, like the Tappan one, if the property is there, and if the people there are both opposed, and they have cleanly operating systems that an independent person says has another 10 years of life, do I think that this needs to be a high priority right now? I think that weighs into my decision.
Right.
Versus if the locations are, an evaluation says that they're failing and the property owners want to tap in.
They can be 2 separate projects. We
They
don't have to
could, but
lump them. Yes.
They don't have to be
Yeah.
lumped, but I think
Right.
part of it is part of it is if they're failing or they're close to failing. I think you do then you do the projects, and then you work with Hancock Public Health and regional planning to help the property owners in cases where they need financial assistance because it's to the community's benefit. I mean, that's what
Right.
Robin is
Sure.
saying. She's representing the community and saying that there's a benefit to our community to do this. So let's work towards that
Yeah.
that community benefit. You ready to go out to bid?
The Newell Street, yeah, I could. I mean, in a month, I could have a contractor, if you guys appropriate money. Yes or no. But I can. I mean, I have plans. I have full plans for that. I just got to write the specs. I mean, if I really push by the end of the week, I could get that portion out. The Tappan, like I said, I got to do a little drawing on that. That's a straight line shot. That's an easy. I'll have to get EPA approval for that one. And then the 2 on Lima, it would just have to see how we can work with the homeowners on seeing how we can run that. So if we want to piece it out, I can. But like I said, the Newell Street, I have plans already done.
So a question to the committee. To expand on Dan's desire or statement about wanting more information, does more information how does more information affect your decision making in this? Does getting more information potentially change your decision?
Right. That's a good question. That is the question. Right.
And I'll go first. No, it does not. I think that we're this close. My bigger concern is the financial burden on the property owners who do not wish this to happen,
Right.
or who cannot afford to make the connection. And I'm more concerned about how we help them, working with, helping them afford it. But in my view, the failing or not, I mean, taking Mr. Welly's comments with his experience, if they're not failing today, they're going to be failing it's just a matter of time. So let's be proactive and get it done. So I'm answering my question. I'm very interested in the rest of the committee's
Well,
view.
I'm gonna answer secondly. I probably agree with Mr. Welly that the systems are probably junk. They may be working partially, but they're probably not working up to snuff. So getting more information on those probably would not change my opinion of what this project would be, and I would be all in favor of going forward with this project.
Josh, Dan, Brian.
I guess my concern when I started is building this bridge to nowhere, right? I mean, we build these sewers and nobody taps in. So,
They're gonna have to tap it.
well, okay, but I can tell you, I mean, I've knocked on the doors, and I'm telling you, when they say they don't have the money, I believe them. So, I know, but it comes down to as long as we have a plan that, because I don't want to force people to leave their homes because we're going to burden them with this, you know. I don't think we should. Our most vulnerable population, I don't want to put that burden on. So as long as we are working towards helping them with, you know, grants and, you know, whatever. But I just want to make sure if we build it that everybody's tapped in, you know, and then I'm okay with it. But because actually after I'm chewing on this testing more and more, we put this dye in there. And if the criteria is that dye has to stay on their property, how are you ever going to determine that? I mean, you're going to be digging down there just to see if the dye goes across. I just thought, the more you think through this dye testing, I'm not sure how, what we're going to learn from it, I guess. So,
Josh, Brian.
I mean, I guess as far as I'm concerned, I would want to make sure the data supports it because the term unfunded mandates comes to mind. And that would be an undue burden on some of these homeowners. I share that view with Dan. That's just kind of where I'm at.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, Grant and Randy. We need to get these people on sanitary. And it's just making sure that we can make the financial side for those people work. I mean, to me, that's the biggest concern is making sure they can afford it.
If the finances work, I'm all for it. But we got to make sure that we're not creating undue hardship.
I guess this question that I have is for Lindsay. Is there any type of funding that would be possible for, I think you mentioned earlier that there's a possibility for some funding, but I don't want to tell these people, yeah, there's possibility, and then all of a sudden, there's no money.
So with regional planning, we currently do have the water pollution control loan grant funding, but you have to meet the criteria, and it's a financial criteria. I'm not sure that the new flyer is up yet, but it will be on regional planning's website. It'll be on our website. You can call our office if anybody in the audience is interested, so you can review the qualifications, just so you have an awareness as a property owner.
so how many years would they have to tap in? I mean, I guess if we go through a grant cycle and they don't make it, and then we go through, I mean, you know, how many grant cycles can we apply before we, you know?
So the regulations are we give property owners 2 years to make that connection. Now, we can only use 50% of the funding, so we have received $150,000, so that means we only have $75,000 eligible to put towards a sewer connection project. If we have, let's say, 5 property owners that meet that criteria, and we've went through all of that money, we have waitlisted those property owners until the next grant cycle rolled around and put them on it. They had first priority. We actually had to do that with a couple people on the Blue Bonnet Bittersweet project. So
How many
if people
peop-
are eligible, we're not going to
Yeah.
tell them, hey, this grant cycle's done, we're at the end of your 2-year cycle or something, you've got to fork up that money. That is not what we have done. We've worked with the people.
How many people at Blue Bonnet would you say you were able to help get funding for? I mean, a high percentage or very few?
A small percentage.
A small percentage.
Yeah. Because of their financial. Yeah.
Okay, I get you. Mhm.
Thank you. I think we have at least a majority consensus that we progress. And I'm glad we had the conversations, because I think that the points that are being brought out are worthy of talking and talking publicly. But I believe I hear, at least of the first of Josh, Randy, and myself, a desire to move forward with more hesitancy from Dan and Brian,
I'm
because you
willing-
want the
Yeah,
information.
just to be clear, no, I'm okay with the study. I guess I want to make sure that if we do this, then we help the people that financially can't afford it, we help them tap in.
I mean, is
So-
that
So it's
well? And
it's
there
a yes, but I want to make, I don't know, so
and
I
there
don't want to
are
have to foreclose on a house because they can't
That's
afford.
where we have to depend on them to.
Right,
Well,
right.
and we have some of our tap fees that we have in the past we have waived to assist. Brian,
I could get to yes if we can waive the tap fees for these properties.
what are our tap fees would be on?
I think for this, it's $5. What's that?
$582. Some are already signed up for it.
There we go. Took the words out of my mouth.
Some of them that didn't tap when they were supposed to already signed the petition and have a free $582 tap fee to be applied to it. The Black Watch does not want to put anybody out of their house. There is no reason that they can't have a no interest loan on their taxes to finance what that we can't get grants for. There's all kinds of ways you can creatively help to assist these people.
Okay. I think we're moving forward.
Just the rural project and the share project.
Ask it out loud.
Oh. Are we talking, this all conversation, is this just the New on Lima Avenue project that he has ready? Or are we talking the Tappan and Lima Avenue project also?
I mean, personally, I'm talking all of them. You know, all six, if we want to go with that number, but
Well, the
So-
635,000 included 8. So we have these two outliers that I don't know about those yet. I'm not. I guess I'm.
So in a perfect world, I'd like to have this sent out as one bid, but I also got to come down to the realization that we're coming towards where a lot of people are getting a lot of work right now. So I would rather, if you guys are good with moving forwards with this, at least get the Newell Street one out, because I can get this out, as soon as possible out on that. I can still do it's not that I'm not doing the other ones. They'll be separate contracts.
Yeah.
We'll bid them out separately. I could do the Tappan and the Lima ones together, but at least Newell I can get out right now.
I'm okay with doing the Newell and Tappan.
Okay.
That was the 420,000.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the two outliers that you just haven't figured it out yet. I mean, right.
Right.
I mean, okay. So there's two projects that cover 6 houses for 420 grand.
Right.
That I think that's what I think we should.
well, I defer to I'll defer to Jeremy on how to bid it out and get the best price. And if you think it's 8 or 6 or 4, 2 or 1, go get it done for as little amount of money
Right.
as possible.
So I
And get
guess
it
that would be
done properly, obviously.
right. Yeah, and that would be the next question too. I'll need advertisement money because this needs to go out to legal bid and all that. I can do an add-on letter for tomorrow night's meeting. If you guys chose to pass that tomorrow night, I can get this out to bid almost this week or Monday type thing. And then it would have a 3-week bid. Then we would have to appropriate the rest of the money. But that's going to be our fastest route because Newell, I can get it out now. I can start going on it. The Tappan, like I said, I got a little bit of design work to do on that, but I got to get an EPA approval because it's an extension of the line as well.
I love add-ons, which is a tongue-in-cheek. If you think that we get such a pricing benefit by being out that quick on part of this and splitting it, once again, I defer to you on how you think you get your best pricing effort. And if that requires an add-on, do an add-on. And if it doesn't, and you think it's better just to bid them all at once, bid them all at once. That is your call. What I'm looking from our committee is in the form of a motion saying what we are wanting or how we are directing Jeremy to proceed. And I'll start it with, I think there is a consensus that yes, we want to continue to do this project in its entirety, and get sanitary there. I also heard that we want to offer the financial assistance that we can by the waiving of the tap fees for these properties in question, and that we also want to encourage and assist Hancock Health Department and Hancock Regional Planning in finding assisting with funding. And then if it's necessary that we have to look at some kind of city-sponsored funding assistance in the form of, and this would obviously have to come into a conversation with the auditor, that we would at least investigate that. But I mean, that's what I'm hearing us say. I'm looking for
I
somebody.
just have one question on
Yeah,
that.
please.
Jeremy, so we talked about Newell for 300, Tappan for 120. It's 420 grand. There's another 220,000, and those are for two outliers. Is that engineered? Are you saying that we're going to go grinder pumps and a force main for those two, or that's still not
That's
sure?
still up in there because we got to do a topo of that area
Okay.
because maybe the ground comes up a lot more
Okay.
than I was thinking. Where their outlets come out is
Okay,
going to play
so
a
that's
big
still
factor.
unknown.
So
So-
that will be a separate project in
Okay.
itself. So I'm not dragging the whole.
So I'm
process
saying,
down.
Grant, I'm saying everything you said, but limited to 420 grand for Newell and Tappan, and the two Lima outliers to be determined. Okay. Grant, you go with that?
Good. What did I say? So Tappan,
Newell
and
and
Newell.
Tappan for 420 grand.
Include 6 houses, correct?
6 houses.
waive tap fees.
And do whatever we can to offer or extend financial assistance.
So I'm going to move that we recommend the continuation of the immediately of the Tappan and Newell projects for $420,000 to service the 6 houses. That we are going to waive the tap fees for all houses, all 8. We're going to and work with and encourage Hancock Public Health and Hancock Regional Planning Commission to work with for financial assistance for the property owners. And do we make a statement on the and we want the other two to continue to work on the investigation of the
Yeah.
other two.
To be determined on the other two.
The Lime Avenue properties. 'Cause those are both in Lime Avenue.
Yeah.
I will second that motion.
Folks, are you in your Lima Avenue? Okay.
Actually, Grant, I have the addresses there. It's 1601 Lima and 1739 Lima. Those are the two outliers.
1601 and
1739.
okay.
For clarification, Grant, you said 8 houses on that first statement?
Six.
No.
There's 6 for the first part.
Yeah,
and then
Tappan
the
and
two
Newell
for
is
the second
6.
part. Okay, 8 total, and then the other 2 for Lime Avenue. All right.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that it's
Yep.
clean.
But we're going to waive the tap fees for all 8.
All 8.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so that's a motion and a second, and a quick discussion on the motion and the second. We have 5 properties that evidently have sanitary available,
Right.
and
And-
have not tapped.
Right.
Are
Six properties.
6 properties? Are we?
And
are
they
we-
have the addresses.
Yep. are we waiving tap fees for them, or is that a conversation to be, a future conversation?
I think we go ahead and waive the tap fees for
I
those
think you
two.
already said some of them had waived tap fees.
waivers of
The Blaine,
six.
the Blaine addresses, I think there's two of them on there. We're part of that first that we did in 15 or 16.
Okay, so there's no need to do that again. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Other comments or questions about it? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign, and that passes. And, any other, well, we don't have any other things on the agenda? And so with that, we'll call this meeting to a close.
To be able to put everything on hold.